We're now just over 2 weeks into Trump 2.0, and it is impossible to adequately cover the things he and his administration are doing. The sheer volume of the craziness going on all at once is truly stunning. Every single day, we hear something about trade wars, or buying Greenland, or retaking the Panama Canal, or treating our northern neighbor like they're an adversary instead of our closest ally. There's this strange obsession with DEI, as if it alone is at the root of all of our problems. Apparently, there is no emergency that can't be blamed on DEI. Then there's Trump's idea for a sovereign wealth fund to possibly buy TikTok, or the more than 50 executive orders so far, and many more headlines that are barely even being covered by the media. Headlines such as the FBI handing over the names of 5,000 employees involved in the January 6 cases to the Trump Justice Department, or how the CIA offered buyouts to its entire workforce in what it claims is an effort to bring it in line with Trump's priorities. The CIA also sent, some might say purposely sent, an unclassified email to the White House listing all employees hired by the spy agency over the last 2 years. We also see how Attorney General Pam Bondi has, on her first day, ordered investigations into Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, and Letitia James. Her very first order of business was to do Donald Trump's bidding. All of this is to say nothing of the chaos that Elon Musk is creating, apparently with Trump's blessing, as he has single-handedly decided which parts of the federal government should be shut down, even though he is acting without congressional oversight. There's also the fact that so many of Trump's executive orders seem to echo Project 2025, that far-right manifesto that Trump told us he had nothing to do with. Purely coincidental, I'm sure. One of those Project 2025 goals is to eliminate the Department of Education, and as it turns out, the Trump administration is now drafting an executive order that would begin the process of eliminating the Department of Education. All of this abject craziness might just have a purpose, as Axios summed up in an article yesterday. Chaos isn't an accident. Trump and his aides know that the tsunami of ideas, executive orders, and proclamations make it hard for opponents to unite around a single message. Think about you or your friends. Are you more intrigued or worked up by all of his controversial nominees, or Greenland, or trade wars, or U.S. aid, or Elon Musk, or Ukraine, or South Africa, or TikTok, or a new sovereign wealth fund, or Trump's own crypto? No human can process this much "he did what" news this fast. What makes all of this even more mind-boggling is that we're not talking about all of this craziness happening over Trump's second term, or even over the next year. Rather, it's in the first 2 weeks of his taking power again. And if all of that constant chaos hasn't been enough, yesterday Trump stated that the U.S. should seize, control, develop, and hold a long-term ownership position in war-destroyed Gaza. Trump's proposal was to turn Gaza into what he called the Riviera of the Middle East and invite the world's people to move there. Yet his announcement surprised many of his own advisors and deeply alarmed the governments in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. Furthermore, Trump's plan to displace the 2 million Palestinians comes at a very sensitive point of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire and hostage deal, and could potentially embolden both Hamas and Israel to resume the war. Because of that, his proposal was praised by members of the Israeli far right, who saw it as a green light for full Israeli occupation of Gaza and the building of settlements. Rather than being a well-thought-out plan by his administration, reports are that this was Trump's own idea, and he had been thinking about it for at least 2 months. Trump added a few details this morning on Truth Social. The Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians, people like Chuck Schumer, would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The U.S., working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what would become one of the greatest and most spectacular developments of its kind on Earth. No soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. Stability for the region would reign. What makes all of this so stunning is that from a biblical perspective, it is exactly what the Antichrist is prophesied to do. And in case you're not sure, Trump already aligns with other descriptions for this end times figure. But here are 4 verses related to the teaching that the Antichrist will do exactly what Trump is talking about. Daniel 11:39 talks about how he shall divide the land for gain. Daniel 11:41 talks about the Antichrist entering the glorious land. Daniel 11:45 speaks of how the Antichrist will plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas, and Joel 3:2 talks about judgment coming upon those who divide God's land. Despite these prophecies of what the Antichrist will eventually do, we cannot ignore the fact that there is serious pushback and even outrage at what Trump said. Nations and individuals have talked about how Trump's plan just isn't feasible. Here's the thing though, we should remember that, with rare exception, nothing Trump says or does is ever directly challenged by Republicans. This has the net effect of giving life to Trump's ideas, enabling them to be refined or molded behind the scenes. In this case, although exactly what Trump said is unlikely to happen in the near future, a portion of it is very possible, even likely to occur, such as the U.S. helping to rebuild Gaza. In fact, an agreement for the U.S. to rebuild Gaza could be connected to or lead into a wider agreement for peace in the Middle East, and Abraham Accords 2, which would be the fulfillment of Bible prophecy about the covenant with many. And of course, as we know, halfway through the 7-year covenant with many, the Antichrist is prophesied to break the agreement and enter the third temple to proclaim himself as God, or, I believe, Savior of the world. So as stunning as Trump's proposal is, and despite all the criticism it has received, don't be surprised if we see some sort of agreement for the U.S. to rebuild Gaza come out of it. And that type of agreement could very well be the impetus necessary for the covenant with many to be confirmed. Because Bible prophecy is clear, the Antichrist will divide the land for gain. It's just a matter of when.